For decades, Brent Hinds was the electrifying force of Mastodon, the man whose guitar riffs shook arenas, whose wild stage presence blurred the line between chaos and genius. His music wasn't just heavy, it was transcendent, pushing the boundaries of metal and carving a legacy of sound that critics called both brutal and beautiful. Fans worshipped him, his peers respected him, and his raw, unapologetic personality made him one of rock's most unpredictable stars. But behind the lights, behind the screaming crowds and thunderous chords, there was another story. A story of reckless abandon, bruised friendships, and sudden disappearances. Brent wasn't just a rock star, he was a stormy man who seemed destined to crash as hard as he rose. From drunken brawls backstage to explosive interviews where he scorched the music industry, Brent lived on the edge. He mocked Grammy wins, dismissed fame, and tore apart the very system that celebrated him. And then, the shocking twist. After years of being the face of Mastodon, Brent Hinds walked away. No farewell tour, no heroic curtain call, just a blunt, almost bitter announcement that he was done. Fans were stunned. How could a man who once seemed inseparable from the music abandon it all so suddenly? Was it burnout? Was it betrayal? Or was it Brent finally breaking free from the machine he had secretly despised for years? Rumors swirled about money, about clashing egos, about Brent's refusal to play the industry's game. Whispers of personal struggles and dark nights of the soul only fueled the mystery. Some said he was finished. Others believed he was plotting something bigger. But the truth, as always with Brent, was far stranger and more complicated than anyone imagined. Brent Hinds was not born into luxury, privilege, or even stability. His story begins in Pelham, Alabama, a small southern town where music wasn't just background noise, but a lifeline. Raised in a working-class family, Brent's childhood was shaped not by abundance, but by grit. He grew up surrounded by the hum of ordinary life. Blue-collar jobs, quiet neighborhoods, and the restless urge to break free. As a boy, Brent was restless, stubborn, and filled with a wild imagination. While other kids followed rules, Brent bent them or broke them entirely. He struggled in school, often more interested in drawing, daydreaming, or playing music than focusing on textbooks. He was mischievous, sometimes reckless, but always chasing something bigger than the small-town expectations set before him. Music became his escape. With a beat-up guitar in his hands, Brent discovered a world where he could channel his restless energy into sound. He didn't just play, he attacked the instrument, twisting chords into raw emotion, bending strings into screams of rebellion. Southern rock, country, and heavy metal swirled together in his playing, forming the foundation of the unique style that would later define Mastodon. But life wasn't easy. Brent worked odd jobs, doing construction, landscaping, whatever it took to keep going. He lived on the edge financially, often broke, sometimes sleeping wherever he could. This hardship toughened him, teaching him resilience and self-reliance. It also fueled his attitude. Brent would never beg, never fake, never conform. He'd carve his own path or die trying. A turning point came when he fell into the local music scene. Alabama's underground was raw, gritty, and alive with experimentation. Brent played with small bands, sharpening his skills, standing out with his aggressive riffs and unpredictable stage presence. He wasn't just a guitarist, he was a spectacle someone you couldn't look away from. Still, it wasn't enough. Brent knew his hometown couldn't contain him. Like countless dreamers before him, he felt the magnetic pull of Atlanta, Georgia, a city with a thriving metal scene and a chance for something bigger. With little money and no guarantee of success, he packed his guitar and left, chasing the unknown. In Atlanta, fate intervened. Brent met Troy Sanders, Bill Kelleher, and Brand Daler, three musicians with the same hunger, the same vision. Together, they didn't just form a band, they created a movement. Mastodon was born, forged in sweat, noise, and relentless ambition. The seeds of a giant had been planted. Brent's wild childhood, his struggles, and his refusal to compromise had all shaped the man who would soon become one of metal's most distinctive voices, not just through his guitar, but through his defiance of everything ordinary. When Brent Hinds arrived in Atlanta, he wasn't looking to be a rock star, he was looking to survive. But survival soon turned into destiny. Atlanta in the late 92nd was a melting pot of genres. Sludge, doom, hardcore, and experimental metal all colliding in a chaotic underground scene. Brent, with his fiery guitar style and unpredictable energy, was exactly the kind of force this world demanded. The meeting of Brent with Troy Sanders, Brand Daler, and Bill Kelleher was more than chance that it was chemistry. Each member brought something distinct: Troy's thundering bass and vocals, Brand's virtuosic drumming, Bill's relentless rhythm work, and Brent's signature riffs that felt both savage and strangely melodic. When the four of them played together, the air changed. Mastodon wasn't just another metal band, it was a beast with teeth, claws, and a mind of its own. Their rise began in small clubs, where audiences were stunned by the ferocity of their sound. Brent's guitar work became the cornerstone of their identity. He blended southern twang with crushing metal tones, weaving complex melodies into brutal riffs. It wasn't just technical skill, it was instinct, raw and untamed. Fans and critics alike noticed. Mastodon was different. In 2002, the band released Remission. The debut was a thunderclap. Critics hailed it as groundbreaking, a fresh direction for heavy metal. Brent's guitar screamed across the tracks, brutal yet strangely soulful. Songs like March of the Fire Ants announced to the world Mastodon had arrived. But it was their sophomore album, Leviathan, 2004, that cemented their legend. A concept album based on Herman Melville's Moby Dick. It was ambitious, theatrical, and unapologetically heavy. Brent's guitar became the harpoon, piercing through waves of sound, guiding listeners through an epic journey. The album won Metal Hammer's Album of the Year, and suddenly, Mastodon wasn't just an underground name, they were a force on the global stage. At the heart of this climb was Brent's restless genius. He didn't chase fame, he didn't chase approval, he chased sound, and sound became his kingdom. His riffs carried the weight of the South, the chaos of rebellion, and the fire of a man who refused to conform. The climb continued with Blood Mountain, 2006, a record that pushed boundaries even further. Brent's guitar work danced between ferocity and psychedelia, earning Mastodon a Grammy nomination and international acclaim. By the time Crack the Sky, 2009, was released, the band had evolved into something almost mythical. The record was a masterpiece of progressive metal, deeply emotional, layered with storytelling. Brent's fingerprints were all over it. Otherworldly solos, aching melodies, riffs that felt like echoes from another dimension. At their peak, Mastodon was hailed as the savior of modern metal. They graced the covers of magazines, played festivals alongside legends, and earned a devoted following worldwide. Brent became an icon, not in the polished, PR-driven sense, but in the way true legends are, raw, authentic, and untamable. Yet, even as success piled up, Brent remained Brent. He rejected celebrity culture, mocked the industry's obsession with awards, and often gave interviews that were as unpredictable as his guitar solos. He was celebrated as a genius, yes, but also feared as a wild card. The same energy that drove Mastodon to greatness also made Brent unpredictable, but there was no denying it. By the 2010 second, Brent Hinds and Mastodon stood at the pinnacle of metal. From underground clubs in Atlanta to Grammy stages and world tours, their climb was meteoric. And at the center of it all was Brent, the restless kid from Alabama, now a giant whose guitar shook the foundations of heavy music. The climb was spectacular, but with great heights come dangerous falls. And Brent's life was about to face storms that no riff could drown out. Every rise comes with shadows, and for Brent Hinds, the shadows were never far behind. Fame didn't polish him, it magnified him. His unpredictability, his recklessness, the same qualities that made him a genius on stage, began to chip away at his world behind the scenes. Life on the road was brutal. Endless tours, sleepless nights, and the constant push of the music industry wore him down. Brent drowned the exhaustion in alcohol, often showing up to interviews or performances visibly intoxicated. For fans, it was part of his wild charm. For his bandmates, it became a storm they had to weather. Stories spread of drunken brawls, disappearing acts, and confrontations that bordered on dangerous. Brent wasn't just living the rockstar glitch, he was burning himself from the inside out. The press loved it. Headlines painted him as the mad genius of Mastodon, a man who could shred the guitar like no other but might punch someone in the face the moment he put it down. In 2007, during a European tour, Brent was hospitalized after a violent street fight left him with severe head injuries. The incident shook fans, fueling rumors about his self-destructive lifestyle. Some wondered if he would even survive the tour. And then there were the interviews. Brent's sharp tongue was notorious. He called out award shows, mocked the Grammys even after Mastodon won one, and dismissed the very system that had elevated the band. In one infamous interview, he declared he hated touring and hated being in Mastodon. The words sent shockwaves through the fan base. Was he serious? Was it a drunken rant? Or was this the truth Brent had been hiding for years? Behind the scenes, cracks began to show. Fame had brought success, but it had also brought tension. The band that once felt like brothers now wrestled with the pressures of money, management, and endless expectations. Brent's erratic behavior only added fuel to the fire. Some insiders whispered about near breakups, about nights when Brent walked away and threatened never to return. Personally, the toll was devastating. Fame isolated him. Relationships crumbled, trust eroded, and the more the world celebrated Brent's genius, the lonelier he seemed to become. He once admitted in an interview that the music industry had sucked the life out of him, leaving him bitter and broken. The scandals piled up bar fights, unpredictable stage behavior, rants that alienated fans and industry insiders alike. But the most shocking blow came when Brent suddenly announced he was leaving Mastodon. No elaborate explanation, no grand farewell, just a quiet, almost bitter exit from the band he had helped create, the band that had carried his riffs to the world. Fans were stunned. How could Brent, the soul of Mastodon, walk away? The theories were endless: money disputes, personal demons, creative clashes. Whatever the truth, one thing was clear: the price of fame had finally caught up with him. Brent Hinds had scaled the mountain of metal, but at the peak, he found not glory, but disillusionment. And his fall from that height left scars not just on him, but on the legacy of Mastodon. When the storm finally broke, Brent Hinds didn't retreat to another stage, he retreated from it. His departure from Mastodon felt like the end of an era, not just for the band, but for metal itself. Fans expected chaos, public feuds, or even a fiery tell-all interview. Instead, what they got was silence. Brent had always been unpredictable, but this was different. He vanished from the center of the spotlight he once dominated. But Brent wasn't gone. He had simply stepped sideways. No longer tethered to the machine of Mastodon, he began exploring music on his own terms. He poured himself into side projects: West End Motel, Fiend Without a Face, smaller, stranger, more experimental outlets that allowed him to follow his wildest impulses without compromise. These projects didn't hit the commercial heights of Mastodon, but they were pure Brent, raw, unfiltered, and defiantly authentic. He also became more visible in unexpected places. Collaborations with other musicians, guest spots, even appearances in film and television reminded the world that Brent was not retired, just redefined. He seemed to relish the freedom. For the first time in years, he could play without pressure, create without expectation. Yet, the scars of fame lingered. Brent spoke openly about his exhaustion with the music industry, describing it as a system that chewed up artists and spat them out. He admitted that touring had left him broken, that years of relentless schedules and business dealings had drained the joy from playing guitar. His honesty resonated with fans, many of whom saw him not as a quitter, but as a survivor who had walked away before it destroyed him completely. Life after Mastodon also brought a change in rhythm. Brent embraced a quieter existence, spending more time away from the glare of cameras. He indulged in hobbies, enjoyed time with friends, and reconnected with life outside the endless cycle of recording and touring. He still played music, yes, but he no longer lived for it. Music became a passion, again, not a prison, and yet he never truly faded. On social media, fans still spotted him jamming, still caught glimpses of his irreverent humor, still witnessed his unapologetic rejection of conformity. He wasn't the Brent Hinds of the Grammy stage anymore, but he was still Brent Hinds, the restless, mischievous soul from Alabama who refused to be tamed. Today, Brent lives somewhere between legend and myth. Some see him as a tragic figure, a man who could have reached even greater heights if not for his defiance. Others see him as a hero, someone who refused to sell out, who walked away on his own terms. Either way, his absence from Mastodon created a void that no one else could fill. In the afterglow of his storm, Brent has become something rare. A rock star who turned his back on fame, yet still commands respect. His riffs remain etched into metal history, his influence undeniable, and his refusal to play the game only adds to the mystery of who he is today. What surprises the public most is not his silence, but his survival. In a world where so many musicians burn out completely, Brent Hinds endures not as the billionaire frontman of a global empire, but as a man who chose to live life his way, even if it meant stepping down from the throne he helped build. For all his chaos on stage and in the press, Brent Hinds has always been more than just the wild guitarist of Mastodon. Behind the tattoos, the whiskey-soaked interviews, and the larger-than-life persona lies a man deeply connected to his roots, to his loved ones, and to a vision of life that goes far beyond money or fame. Unlike many rock stars who flaunted wealth and scandal, Brent never truly bought into the celebrity lifestyle. He was open about his distrust of the industry, his disdain for materialism, and his refusal to conform to expectations. While his bandmates built their careers within the machinery of Mastodon, Brent's private life remained fiercely guarded. He rarely spoke about family in interviews, and when he did, it was with a mixture of affection and protectiveness, as though he knew fame had a way of ruining anything it touched. Brent has no public record of raising children of his own, but he has spoken often about the responsibility of legacy. To him, legacy wasn't just about bloodlines, it was about sound, about art, about passing down an energy that outlives you. Every riff he wrote, every note he bent into life, was part of that inheritance. He wanted his music to live in the hands of the next generation, even if he himself disappeared into silence. In many ways, his students became his children. Younger guitarists worshiped Brent, copying his unique blend of southern twang and crushing metal, idolizing his refusal to follow trends. To them, he wasn't just an idol, he was proof that you could be raw, strange, and entirely yourself and still carve a place in history. Countless interviews with rising metal musicians list Brent Hinds as a direct influence. A man whose playing taught them not just how to hold a guitar, but how to live with honesty, no matter the cost. Still, Brent's legacy isn't just musical, it's personal. His reputation for being brutally honest, for walking away rather than selling out, is part of the torch he passes to others. In a world where many artists compromise to survive, Brent's story is a reminder. You can choose freedom over fame. You can choose yourself, even when the world demands something else. Family, for Brent, has always been unconventional. The bandmates he shared a stage with were like brothers and, at times, bitter rivals. Their journey together was one of love, conflict, triumph, and betrayal, the full spectrum of family dynamics compressed into 2 decades of music. Fans saw the cracks, the public arguments, the tension in interviews, but they also saw the bond. 4 men who built something massive out of nothing, who carried each other through unimaginable highs and devastating lows. Outside of Mastodon, Brent's other bands and collaborations became extensions of that chosen family. West End Motel, Fiend Without a Face, these weren't just musical projects, they were communities of friends, people who shared his restless spirit. To Brent, family wasn't about bloodlines, it was about loyalty, about the people who stood beside you when the noise died down. And what about the next generation? While Brent has not publicly prepared an heir in the traditional sense, his influence ensures that his empire, though not financial, but cultural, will endure. Every aspiring metal guitarist who learns a Mastodon riff, every fan who blasts Leviathan or Crack the Sky decades from now, becomes part of his extended family. His music is the inheritance, and the next generation carries it forward whether they realize it or not. In his later years, Brent has hinted at projects that go beyond music. He has spoken about art, about building, about creating in ways that don't involve guitars or stages. These side ventures, whether public or private, suggest a man preparing to leave behind more than sound, a man shaping his name into something that outlives the spotlight. But perhaps Brent's greatest legacy is the lesson of contradiction. He was chaos and calm, genius and self-destruction, loyal friend and unpredictable enemy. He showed the world that legacy isn't about perfection, it's about being unforgettable. When history writes about Brent Hinds, it won't simply be about his guitar solos or the records that defined a generation. His legacy is far more complex, half triumph, half cautionary tale. He didn't just play music, he carved an identity in the heart of heavy metal that will echo long after the amplifiers go silent. At the core of his legacy is sound. Brent redefined what a metal guitarist could be. Where others chased speed or technical perfection, Brent chased feel. His riffs were jagged yet soulful. His solos wild yet strangely poetic. He pulled from southern rock, blues, psychedelic jams, and sludge, fusing them into a style that couldn't be replicated. It was messy, unpredictable, alive. Critics called it controlled chaos, but for Brent, it was simply his voice. Entire subgenres of metal trace their DNA back to what Mastodon and Brent in particular introduced to the world. Industry experts agree. Brent Hinds helped shift heavy metal from niche to mainstream respectability. Albums like Leviathan and Crack the Sky are now studied not just as great records, but as milestones that redefine the artistic potential of heavy music. They sit alongside Metallica's Master of Puppets and Black Sabbath's Paranoid in conversations about genre-defining works. Brent's fingerprints are all over them, but his influence extends beyond sound. His refusal to conform, his brutal honesty in interviews, his disdain for fame and awards these two became part of his legend. To many, Brent embodied the spirit of metal more than any trophy or chart position ever could. He reminded the world that metal was born from rebellion, not boardrooms. And yet, his story is also a warning. Brent's battles with alcohol, with fame, with the very band he helped build paint a picture of the heavy cost of success. His sudden exit from Mastodon stands as one of rock's most shocking breaks, a reminder that even the strongest foundations can fracture when weighed down by fame. Younger musicians look to his career not only as inspiration, but also as a lesson in what happens when the fire that fuels creativity is allowed to consume the man behind it. Fans still debate his place in history. Some see him as a tragic genius, who could have given more had he endured the industry longer. Others see him as a hero, someone who refused to bend to the pressures of money and fame, who walked away rather than sell out. Either way, his story stirs passion. Nobody is indifferent to Brent Hinds. That, in itself, is legacy. There are no universities named after him, no billion-dollar empires bearing his brand. But in rehearsal rooms, in dive bars, in the bedrooms of teenage guitarists learning their first Mastodon riff, his name endures. The Brent Hinds style, a mix of southern grit and cosmic chaos, lives on in thousands of hands, shaping the sound of the future. For historians of music, Brent is both icon and outcast. They place him alongside figures like Kurt Cobain or Lemmy Kilmister. Flawed, volatile, but unforgettable. He wasn't built for smooth careers or spotless reputations. He was built for lightning in a bottle moments, the kind that split history into before and after. 10, 20 years from now, when new generations discover Leviathan or stumble upon a grainy video of Brent wailing on stage, they'll see more than a guitarist. They'll see a man who lived without filters, who bared every contradiction of the rock life, and who left behind something untamable. Brent Hinds' legacy is not perfection, it is impact. And in that sense, he has already achieved immortality. Brent Hinds' life is not the tale of a polished superstar or a flawless legend. It is the story of a man who carried chaos in his veins, who turned pain into sound, and who refused to bow to anyone, not even the system that tried to crown him. His guitar told stories of rebellion and beauty, fury and tenderness, all wrapped into one unforgettable voice. Was he a timeless legend or a fleeting phenomenon? Perhaps both. Brent was the fire that burned brightest in Mastodon's rise, the spark that turned heavy riffs into anthems of a generation. But like fire, he was untamable, dangerous, impossible to control. His sudden walk away from fame wasn't a failure, it was his final statement, a refusal to let the industry define his worth. What do we learn from his journey? That ambition comes with a price. That genius often carries self-destruction in its shadow. That family, whether by blood or by band, is fragile under the weight of fame. And that even at the height of success, a man can feel empty if he has lost himself. Brent's story reminds us that fame is not always the dream it appears to be. The applause fades, the trophies gather dust, but the scars remain. Yet, in his refusal to compromise, in his decision to walk away, Brent left behind something purer than fame. He left behind truth. Was the price of fame worth paying? Only Brent can answer that. But for the fans, for the countless musicians he inspired, the answer is clear. Every riff, every scream, every chaotic note he unleashed was worth it, because it was real. If you found this story eye-opening, subscribe and stay tuned for more hidden truths from the world's richest, most famous, and most untamable souls.